anybody who is not 11 players, can I get you to join me on the sides right here? Anyone who's not 11 players, can I get you to join me on the sides? Can I get you to join me? Thank you. Not a state legislator.
Hi, excuse me all. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to get started in just 2 minutes here. Anyone needs water, if you could feel free to raise a hand. We've got someone on our team who will go ahead and make sure you get it to you. Thank you all so much. We'll get started in just a bit. Already acting up.
It's Raleigh.
It is Raleigh.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm State Senator Sidney Batch. Thank you for being here on this important day and in this important time. When it comes to the very short list that House and Senate Republicans actually care about, I hate to break it to you, but it's not you. They don't care about the cost of your groceries. They don't care about the ridiculous prices that you're paying at the pump. And they certainly don't care whether or not your child's school is well funded so that we have a highly qualified teacher in every single classroom. We know that they don't care because they haven't lifted a finger to fix any of it. So stop listening to what they say and just watch what they do for a second. Because what they do tells you everything about who they are. And what they care about almost all the time, and in every bill that we see, is holding on to power. House Bill 958 is just the latest proof. As you probably remember from the headlines, every single year, the North Carolina General Assembly, and I mean every single year, Republicans find a new way to restrict voter access. In 2023, it was voter ID. In 2024, they took a hurricane relief bill, a bill meant to help families dig out of a disaster, and they buried yet another power grab deep inside the bill, handing over our elections to a partisan auditor. In 2025, it was the maps. Phil Berger and Destin Hall, taking their marching orders from Trump, redrew our congressional districts mid-decade just to squeeze out one congressional seat. And in 2026, it's this, House Bill 958, which they passed just 98 days before the election. And with every single change, Republicans show the exact same thing. They only care about maintaining their political power by any means necessary. Like when they handed the state auditor even more power over elections and ordered him to randomly audit all of our county boards of elections across the state. Or what about the voter roll purge that you better not be caught dead on, literally, because they ensured that you have no process to fight it before your name is removed. Or what about the cuts to early voting during primary elections? Because after all, in a gerrymandered state like ours, where nearly every district is decided in the primaries, they, and sometimes just by a few votes, they cut early voting by a week. And if you don't think that's intentional, just ask Phil Berger. And when this bill came to the Senate floor, my fellow Democratic colleagues stood together, and we went ahead and we fought back against the Republicans. We brought more than half a dozen amendments to fix their manufactured mess, and not surprisingly, all of our amendments were voted down by every single Senate Republican in the chamber. Because to be clear, their bill was never about election security. It's all about the fact that this is a party scared of its own voters. That should make every single North Carolinian furious. Because in just 4 years, they have changed our elections every year. The Senate took 2 days to pass this bill to limit your access to the ballot box, but they took over a year to pass a budget. When it comes to your gas, your groceries, and your family's bills, they just want you to wait and wait and wait and wait some more. And when they finally show up to do their job, they hand you pennies on the dollar. But when it comes to protecting their own power, this majority moves with lightning speed and spares no effort. Luckily, there are still elected officials every single day fighting for you, many of which are behind me. And that is what this fight was on the Senate floor, and that is what this veto is. Now Republicans face a choice. Side with the voters of North Carolina who have already asked for fair and free elections, or override the governor's veto in yet another disingenuous effort to maintain political power. We already know which of those options they will choose, and Senate Democrats will stand united to sustain the governor's veto. Look, Republicans are free to choose, but they're not free from the consequences of their choices, and November is coming. With that, I would like to turn it over to my wonderful colleague, Leader Robert Reeves.
Thank you, Leader Batch, and I thank all of you for being here at this momentous time. It would be nice to say, as Leader Batch has already told you, that this was brand new territory and it's been unexplored. I think it says a lot that when the Voting Rights Act was gutted by the Supreme Court, that all the southern states moved with lightning speed, but North Carolina, because they had already moved with lightning speed. So they didn't need to bother themselves with anything like that. And that's what we've seen over the past 15 years. Republicans have controlled the General Assembly, and their trend has been to go away from true representation, not just when it comes down to us, but as you've heard, they even want to play in the primary process now because they're scared of their own voters in the primary process. And so they do that. And so all they want to do is make sure that you have less power as voters and that they have more power for themselves. And that's why I'm glad that Governor Stein is choosing to veto House Bill 958 today. This bill was passed, yes. This bill was passed along party lines because it only benefits one party. You hear the bill's proponents talk about how these changes are needed to ensure voters have confidence in elections, which I appreciate because they used to tell the fiction that it was all about voter fraud, and so they don't pretend anymore. Now they're saying, well, you don't have confidence in elections, even though the only reason you don't have any confidence in your elections is because of the people who keep changing the rules on you day by day, month by month, no matter what time of year it is. And no neutral observer of North Carolina politics can honestly say that the changes made to our elections over the past decade and a half of Republican control are about securing elections or about protecting the integrity of the elections. One party here controls how districts are drawn for the legislative races and congressional races. One party controls the rules by which these elections are run. And now one party controls the State Board of Elections and its partisan operatives, which seem to multiply by the day. Because it's funny, you see hundreds of pages of text messages from one, they say, well, we got rid of that guy, but then it feels like the pressure didn't go away. So I guess the names might change, but the directive still stays the same. Fix these elections by any means necessary. And my point here today is that enough is enough. Some years we see monster election bills, other years we see smaller tweaks around the edges, but the sum of these efforts is what we have to concentrate on, and the sum of these efforts is going all towards the same goal, making it easier for Republican leadership, present leadership, to hold on to their power. Not even looking up for other Republicans in there, they're making sure they stay in power, no matter what you feel. And it may feel a bit like Groundhog Day hearing me talk about voting rights and hearing a lot of us talking about voting rights. I get it, but you got to keep hearing it. You've got to keep paying attention and you've got to keep listening because you will look up one day and you just won't have the right and you won't know where it went. Because I am here to tell you that your vote does matter, whether they want it to or not. The right to vote was fought for over decades by all groups. There was only a select few that had the right to vote for a very long time. Unfortunately, there are those of us old enough in this room to remember when there were groups that still didn't have the right to vote, groups that still couldn't go in and sign to get a house, women going in the 70s still not being able to do this. These rights have been fought for, struggled for, cared for, and now without any impunity, they're just stripping them away. So what I'm asking you to do is to stand with Governor Stein, stand here with my colleagues that are here, and we appreciate all of you being here, and show that we as a people, as North Carolinians, will stand for voting rights for all of us. Because it's not about who you're voting for, it's the fact that you ought to have the right to vote. And it should not matter who you are, where your zip code is, what your economic income is, what voter roll they want to put you on, and it shouldn't matter who's in charge of the Board of Elections if you're doing your job. So with that being said, I will turn it over to one of my former colleagues who will soon be a colleague on the other side, the Reverend James Galliard.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader Reed and Leader Batch. Good afternoon, everyone. I stand as senior pastor of Word Tabernacle Church in Rocky Mount, but I also represent faith leaders throughout our state. And so I'm grateful for the pastors that are in this space, the rabbis that are in this space, the imams that are in this space. The ballot box is one of the last places that both the poor and the powerful get to stand in the same line. The ballot box is one of the last places with whether or not you have a GED or a PhD, you have equal standing. The ballot box is one of the last places that whether you live in a gated community or whether you live in a single wide trailer, your vote equally matters. The prophet Isaiah spoke about this directly, not to Christians, not to Jews, not to believers. He spoke about this specifically to legislators. He spoke to people with pens, people with gavels, people with the power to write laws. And this is what he said: "Woe to those who decree unrighteous decrees." And then he said, "and rob the needy of justice." Isaiah reminds us that legislation is never morally neutral. Every law either expands justice or it restricts justice. Every vote in a legislator either helps people or it hurts people. We must be mindful that every generation has written election laws. The question is whether history will remember them as laws that protected democracy or laws that protected politicians. That's why I cannot honestly call House Bill 958 an election law change bill. It's really an election manipulation bill. It's really an election suppression bill. Because when legislation makes it harder to vote, creates uncertainty after Election Day, and expands opportunities to challenge lawful ballots, it does not strengthen democracy. It actually weakens public trust. And so today, Governor Stein has chosen to stand on the side of fairness. He has chosen to stand on the side of public confidence. He has chosen to stand on the right of every eligible North Carolinian to participate in our democracy. And I want to thank him. And I want to thank him on behalf of the faith community and say to him that we're going to support you and we're going to vow to continue this fight with our governor. Because at the end of the day, voting is not a privilege granted by politicians. It is a responsibility that is protected by our democracy. For generations, the African American church has embraced a sacred tradition that we call souls to the polls. It's where we move from worship to the voting booth because we see civic participation as an act of discipleship and an act of stewardship. The research surrounding House Bill 958 notes that when you shorten the primary early voting period, it results in longer lines and ultimately a suppressed vote. We see evidence of this in Florida, Ohio, and Georgia. This is why many people of faith, myself included, my congregation that I represent, we see this legislation as more than changing election procedures. This bill is a direct attack on the sacred tradition of the black church. The black church prayed when others protested. We organized when others hesitated. We marched when others remained silent. We buried martyrs while still believing that America could become better than she has been. It is deeply unfortunate that instead of honoring the legacy, this bill and the bill's sponsors seek to advance legislation so many faithful people experience as undermining one of America's greatest moral institutions. The black church deserves respect, not restriction. We deserve partnership, not suspicion. We serve gratitude and not greater obstacles to the community that we have faithfully served. So today is more than about one vote. It's more than about one veto. It is about a better vision for North Carolina. Instead of passing voter suppression bills, how about we pass legislation that removes future election law changes from partisan hands and places them in an independent, nonpartisan citizen commission? Because at the end of the day, election law should be people above power, people above politics, people above partisanship. And so today I want to offer as a faith leader an invitation. How about we build election laws that our grandchildren will be proud to inherit? Let's protect both access and integrity. If our democracy is strong enough to count every vote, it should be strong enough to hear every voice. So Governor Stein's veto is not the end of this conversation. It is an opportunity to begin a better conversation. It is an opportunity that we can agree to disagree and not dishonor each other. It's an opportunity to compete without excluding groups of people. It is an opportunity to govern with all North Carolinians in mind. So because when every voice is heard, our democracy is stronger. When every vote is counted, our union is healthier. And when justice guides not only our pulpits, but our public policy, then North Carolina becomes the kind of place where every person has the opportunity not merely to vote, but also to thrive. Would you join me in welcoming to the podium Shia? She is a student at North Carolina A&T University.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shia Rozier, a fourth-year student at North Carolina A&T, and I'm glad to be here as Governor Stein takes action against House Bill 958, protecting people's voting access. Now, some of you may recognize my face from Protect Ours NC, a coalition that has been active trying to protect our polling sites at North Carolina A&T and UNCG these past couple of months. Now, what some of you all may not know is that this fight started long before many of you all may have joined in January. Ever since I arrived to A&T, I have stood before the North Carolina Board of Elections since 2023, but nothing has compared to what we've experienced in the past 12 months. In November of 2025, we stood before the Guilford County Elections Board and were told by the board chair that voting was a privilege and not a right. Within 15 minutes, with no public comment, we were passed a plan that didn't include A&T nor UNCG and other community polling sites. Then in January, we organized a coalition of students up to Raleigh to the State Board of Elections, breaking away from our academics and going to Raleigh on the second day of classes. We were not given the opportunity for public comment. Another plan was passed without our universities again. And as we stood before the Board of Elections and asked them why our polling site would not be included, they told us we had 5 minutes to leave before they would call State Capitol Police. Now, there have been plenty of questions and assumptions in the past few months made about us throughout this process. Why do students need a polling site so close? Why are they asking for one now? And why is this such a big deal? And the frustrating part about this is we've tried to answer those questions directly to our representatives. We have repeatedly requested private meetings in order to have conversations as their constituents and not their adversaries. Yet none of the members who have voted against our polling site have taken us up on that request. So today, I will take time to answer some of those questions. Now, a lot of times people will ask why we want a polling site now when we haven't had one in the past midterm elections. To that, I'd say that the mistakes of the past should not set the precedent for the needs of the present. See, what many people don't realize is that at North Carolina A&T and UNCG, like many other universities, freshmen cannot have their vehicles on campus. And when you look at the enrollment numbers of the largest HBCU in the nation and our neighboring university, and factor in the additional numbers of students who simply do not have their own personal vehicle, what you are left with is thousands of landlocked students who do not have access to the polls without having to pay for them, a modern-day poll tax. And that is why this so-called compromise plan recently passed by the Guilford County Board of Elections will not do. Because a compromise between whom? Certainly not the UNC students who are more than a 30-minute walk away from that polling site, and the A&T students who are more than a 45-minute away walk through intersections and railroad tracks just to get there. And that is why the polling site plans being made at other universities in our state will not do either. As a nation, as we discuss youth civic engagement and wanting to increase that, it cannot just be a talking point. It has to be an infrastructural investment. And House Bill 958 is another example of that same exact pattern. Many students rely on early voting for a number of reasons. Their strict class schedules, out-of-state students being able to do same-day registration, and also just being able to get a ride to the polls. Early voting helps people, and specifically young people, exercise their constitutional right to be able to vote, and that should be protected and not restricted. I implore you to believe, just as I believe, that access to the polls is not a political issue. Whether you vote red, blue, purple, or green, we are not asking for a specific vote. We're just asking for the opportunity to be able to do so. And thank you. And democracy is something that we should be excited for, not something that we are continuously fighting for access to. It is now my honor to introduce our North Carolina Governor, Stein.
Wonderful job.
Shia, that was awesome. Thank you. Thank you for your introduction. Thank you for your powerful words. I also want to thank Senator Batch, Representative Reeves, and Reverend Galliard for being here and speaking so movingly about this most fundamental of rights, our right to have our voice be heard by our government. This room is an inspiring sight. Thank you all for being here. As I look around, what I see is power. People like you power our democracy. I know it, you know it, and the General Assembly knows it. That's why legislators are trying to make it harder for you to vote and for your vote to count. Because they know they have not delivered for you. They know that the state budget was 2 years overdue, and that for most folks, it does not keep pace with inflation. They know they're making your utility bills more expensive when they are already too high. They know they're taking scarce public dollars out of the backpacks of our public school kids to put into the bank accounts of well-to-do parents sending their children to unaccountable private schools. They know they are more focused on giving tax breaks to the wealthy and to out-of-state corporate shareholders than putting more money into your pockets. They know they haven't raised the minimum wage in 17 years. And they know they've focused on culture wars that divide and distract us from how little progress they have made. So rather than to make your life better, they want to make it harder for you to hold them accountable for their failures. But we are here today because we can stop this anti-voter law. Here's what's wrong with the bill. They make it harder to vote early. They're slicing a full week off of early voting in the primary. About 200,000 North Carolinians voted in the first week of early voting this year. And if you vote early in the general elections, this bill makes it easier for partisan officials to throw out your vote for up to 3 days after the election is over. More than 4 million North Carolinians voted early in 2024. It is far and away the most popular way that folks vote in our general election. Who here has voted early? So if you are lawfully registered, show your ID and vote early, some sore loser could still try to throw it out after the election is over. Your leaders should respect your vote, not restrict it. And I want to add some context to what Senator Batch and Representative Reese said about putting this into some historical context, because this is part of a years-long effort by Republicans in the General Assembly of partisan attacks on our elections and on your vote. This is the same body that passed a monster voter suppression law that the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals threw out, concluding that it targeted black voters with, quote, almost surgical precision. It was wrong. The state should be about making it easier for eligible voters to participate, not harder. They've also spent the past decade and a half gerrymandering our district maps to discriminate against certain voters. In 2022, the North Carolina Supreme Court ruled that partisan gerrymandering violated our state constitution. And the state's congressional delegation and our 50-50 state was 7 Republicans and 7 Democrats. Just 5 months later, after Republicans took back the state Supreme Court, and without any change in the law or the facts of that case, the new court simply threw out its precedent, its prior decision, and gave the legislature a blank check to gerrymander districts. And gerrymander they did, turning North Carolina's congressional delegation into one that now favors Republicans, 10 Republicans and 4 Democrats in a purple 50-50 state. Then last year, the president told the legislature to gerrymander again to try to pick up yet another seat. And the legislature was quick to oblige with yet another map that favors Republicans even more. In our democracy, the people should choose their representatives, not the other way around. Two years ago, Jefferson Griffin, a losing Republican candidate for the Supreme Court, tried to throw out tens of thousands of valid votes to overturn an election he lost. It took a federal judge appointed by President Trump to declare that you do not change the rules of an election after it has taken place. The Republican General Assembly simply does not have confidence that it can win elections on their record. They are scared of you, and they are scared of your vote. Before I even took office, the General Assembly stripped oversight of our elections administration from the governor's office, where it has always been, and gave it to the state auditor, a Republican, where it has never been, not in any state in these United States. Elections administration in North Carolina has always been done by nonpartisan elections professionals. But the auditor has politicized the administration of our elections, appointing the former executive director of the state Republican Party as his liaison to the county boards of elections. These partisans are scared of student voters like Shia, so they went after early voting sites on our college campuses. They're scared of black voters, so they went after Sunday voting. And they're scared of early voters, so they told county boards of elections where to allow early voting and when. It is wrong, and I am fed up. Time and again, they would rather change the rules of our elections to secure advantage than to do the work that the voters expect, which is to improve people's lives. Folks wake up every day, go to work to provide for their families. But when they get home, at the end of the month, they look at their bills trying to figure out which one they can put off till their next paycheck. While you all are doing your jobs, the General Assembly has failed to do its. Their job is to make your life better. A lower cost of living, better public schools, healthier families, safer communities, a brighter future for our children. But because they aren't doing those things, they are trying to avoid accountability. My question to you is, are you going to let them? No. We will not. Our right to vote is precious. It's the fundamental right that underpins every other right that we possess. That's why I will always protect you and your right to vote. And that's why I am vetoing this anti-voter law today. But I need you. If you value your right to vote, call your representatives and tell them to uphold my veto. The bill passed on purely Republican party line vote. Not a single unaffiliated or Democratic representative voted in favor of this bill. We can hold this veto, but we need everyone to show up and to stand up. So please contact your representative, because in this democracy, the power rests with you, the voters, and I intend to keep it that way. I will now veto House Bill 958. Now let's get to work. Thank you.